Hi everyone, it's Laura here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how to create a winter shaker card using stamps by Gerda Steiner Designs. The stamp set I will be using today is the Snowman Friends stamp set by Gerda Steiner Designs, and like pretty much every stamp set by Gerda Steiner Designs, it's full of adorable images, and this one is a great set for your winter cards, but will work great for your last-minute Christmas cards too. To start off this card, I stamped my images on some Nina Solar White 110 pounds cardstock. I have the cardstock laid down in my MISTI and secured with the MISTI magnets, and I am doing some stamping using hybrid ink by scrapbook.com. And today I will be doing some coloring with my Spectrum Noir markers. I kept the coloring pretty simple and I'm adding shading as if the light source is on the top left of the screen, so that the darkest areas on the images will be the ones on the bottom and on the right portion of the images themselves. I started by shading the snow on the snowman, and for that I am using some very light blue-green markers. I started off with the BT2 marker, I blocked in the shadows, and now I am coming in with my BT4 and intensifying the shadows in those same areas in order to get more contrast. Even if I do want the snow to look white on the final image, in order to create dimension and a sense of three-dimensionality in the images, we still need to add some shading, and this is why I am using these blue-green markers today to create some interest on the snowman. Once I was done adding my BT4 marker, I went back in with my BT2 and tried to blend the two colors together. My BT2 marker was a little bit dry, so I had to work harder than usual to get a nice blend. And then I came in with my colorless blender to get an even smoother transition between the shades and the areas that I left white. I then moved on to coloring the hats, and I used some light blue markers to color the brims and the pom-poms on the hats. I used TB3, TB2 and TB1, but at the end of the coloring I decided that I wanted a little bit more contrast on the images, so I came back in with a TB4 marker as well. And I will list all the markers that I used in the blog post that you will find linked in the description box down below. You will find there a color chart with all the markers used for each areas in the images. And if you want, you can pin them on Pinterest so that you have them handy and you can find them easily again. For the main part of the hats, I wanted to get some sort of a wine red type of color, but I don't have such a color in my Spectrum Noir markers. I have the entire range, but that particular shade that I wanted wasn't there, so I decided to make my own. Basically, the principle is that alcohol markers in general, and so Spectrum Noir markers too, are transparent, so you can layer them to tone the color that you have underneath. And this is what I will be doing with the hats. So I am first laying down a coat of reds, and I used DR7, DR6 and DR5. Again, I am adding the shadows as if the light was coming from the top left of the screen, so that my darker areas are on the bottom right portion of the images. And once this first red layer was done, I went back in with some purples. I am using the PL markers, and in particular I used the PL5 and the PL3. So I'm going over the shadow areas with the PL5 and then blending that out with the PL3. And this way I build contrast and I also tone down those reds. And you can see how from a bright red I have this sort of burgundy color, I guess you call it. Anyway, a more desaturated, more purplish red. And you can apply these principles to modify the colors you have and get shades that might not necessarily be present in your marker range. And this way you can make even more out of the supplies you have. Keep in mind that you will not be able to create entirely new shades, but you can produce new tones for the colors you have in your stash. In the meantime, you saw me color the noses of the snowman with some oranges and the buttons with some cool grays. And this is where I came in with the TB4 marker to intensify the contrast on the blue areas of the hat and make everything look a little bit more cohesive. Off camera, I also colored the tree branch, the little bird and the ornament. I used pretty much the same colors that I used so far, apart from some browns for the tree branch. And as I said, you will find a color combination chart on my blog, so you can use that as a reference. This stamp set comes with coordinating dies, but I don't have them, so I'm using my EK Success Cutter B scissors to cut out the images. And once I was done with that, I could move on and start working on my shaker card. On my desk I have two pieces of cardstock, some white cardstock and one of the papers in the Fawn perfectly plaid winter paper pad, which I cut with the Fawn large stitched rectangle stackable dies. And now I'm using my Tonic Studios guillotine trimmer to trim a strip out of this pattern paper. I will be using this snow globe die. This is by Fawn as well. It's from the Ready Set Snow Shaker add-on die set. And I'm using that as a guide to measure how large a strip I want to trim. And then I can go ahead and actually trim it out with my mini guillotine trimmer. This way I am left with a strip that measures roughly 1¼ by 5½ inches, and because I used that Fawn die to die cut the pattern paper, I have a continuous stitched detail all around my shaker front. I am then going to use this die over here. This is part of the Fawn Ready Set Snow Shaker add-on die set, and I'm going to use that to cut an opening on my card front, and this will be the window of my shaker. I then did some more die cutting off camera, and I used another of the dies in that same set to die cut the base of my snow globe out of some white cardstock. I used it also for the background of my shaker, although I will discard this die cut later on. And also I used that same die to die cut the bottom part of the snow globe. I did some partial die cutting and I'm going to snip off these two little pieces that are sticking out and I don't need. And this pattern paper is also by Fawn. It's from the Knock on Wood paper pad, and the starry paper over there is from the Beachside paper pad, also by Fawn. The die set also comes with a die that will cut a small hillside, and I used it to create this small hill over here out of some more white cardstock. And then I took one of my Ranger brushes, the one that I used to blend my blue Distress Oxides, and I added a little bit of shading to the snow hill with only the ink that was left on my brush. At this point, all the elements for my shaker were ready, so I could actually start assembling the shaker. I trimmed some acetate to size, and then I'm going to coat the entire back of my shaker front with some double-sided adhesive. I then removed the backing of my adhesive and adhered the acetate sheet on the back of my shaker front, basically covering the shaker window. And because I had a little bit of acetate sticking out, I used my scissors to trim off the excess. At this point, I started assembling my snow globe, but I did it in the wrong order, in the sense that I should have first adhered the snow hill to the back of the snow globe and then glued that to my shaker front. But I didn't, so basically you see I'm first putting down the snow globe. I am now adhering the wooden pattern paper to the bottom. And this is where I figured out that the snow hill was supposed to be glued at the back of the snow globe. So what I had to do is I had to carefully try to lift the snow globe off the acetate, and I was able to do that because the glue hadn't dried completely. I also used my tweezers to lift the bottom of the snow globe just the right amount so that I could slide in the snow hill, and then I adhered the snow globe back in place. And because I had dropped the snow hill on the acetate, I had some glue residue over there, but I was able to wipe that off with a microfiber cloth. So you can see mistakes happen, but there is often a way around them. I'm going now to double up my foam tape. This is the Scotch 3M foam tape, and coat the entire back of my shaker front with that. And I am using a double layer of foam tape so that my shaker elements have enough room to move around and make the shaker even more fun. To go around the curved area of my snow globe, I am using a trick that I learned from Amy R, which basically consists in removing the backing of your foam tape so that you're able to turn it and follow the shape of your shaker window. Once the entire back of my shaker front was covered with foam tape, I took some faux snow. I got this at a local store and I think it's really fun for winter shaker cards, and I added it inside my shaker window. And for a little bit of extra sparkle, I added some Studio Katia chunky glitter. I then removed the backing of my foam tape and adhered another piece of that same pattern paper that I showed before to the back of my shaker window. And I used that because it was a little bit larger and it was easier to coat the back of my shaker with it, rather than with the die cut that I had shown you before. And at this point, all I had to do was to arrange the rest of the elements on my card front. I'm using Nuvo glue and my EK Success reverse tweezers to adhere everything to my shaker front, and these reverse tweezers are really helpful, especially when you're dealing with small images like I did for this card. I adhered the little bird on the branch and this little ornament hanging from the branch. And finally, for the sentiment, I die cut the word hello out of some grey cardstock, and for that I used a die from the My Favorite Things Hello There die set. I adhered the sentiment at an angle for some added interest, and then I decorated the inside of the card with that extra snowman that I had colored, and one of the sentiments from the Foxes stamp set, which I stamped with Memento ink in London Fog. And that finished off my card. I really love interactive cards, and shakers are so fun and not difficult at all to make. This one is really quick and easy, and I think would make a really great winter card, good for any occasion. And that's it for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments below, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. You can visit my blog for the full list of supplies, and I'll catch you guys soon with the next one. Ciao!